The battery is a really important part of your e-bike. Obviously powers you up the hills with all that assistance to the motor. Now we often get asked the question here on EMBN about riding your e-bike without a battery. So today we've come to 417 Bike Park to see how it affects your ride without a battery in your e-bike. Now, why would you choose not to have the battery in your e-bike? Well, there's quite a few actual reasons. And first up, it's going to be traveling with your e-bike. No airline will allow you to fly with an e-bike with a battery installed. It's usually a case of getting to your destination and renting out a battery. Now, the destination you might be going to might be chairlift assisted or gravity focused. Then it might not be such a problem. So when it comes to riding trails with chairlift access, you might find that e-bike with a battery in will exceed the chairlift's actual weight specifications. So by removing that battery, you're going to bring the weight of that bike down and allow you access to that chairlift. Next up is the forgotten or flat battery. Now we've all been there, you think you put your battery on charge, but you arrive at your riding destination and either you've forgotten the battery or it's flat. Now you might want to shed that battery just to avoid having that dead weight in the bike. So if you're riding a gravity-assisted bike park like we are here today, removing the battery might make the bike a little bit more nimble and a bit more active out on the trail. So I've just whipped the battery out of my Spectral on and already it's feeling pretty sprightly just in the car park. So hardest bit is going to be getting out of the way first. This is the climb. We're going to time it up and down the hill without a battery. So let's go. And one part of this ride I am looking forward to is seeing what descending feels like without a battery. Still got the weight of the motor, but losing that battery, 2.4 kilograms out of the bike, that's quite substantial. Seeing this bike weighs, I think, 22 kilos. I can take it down to around 20 kilos itself. All right, it's a bit flatter here. I can deal with this. Oh my God. Oh. 6 minutes, 55 seconds of pure heart-burning slog. I would definitely not recommend that on an e-bike without the battery, and I think even on a standard mountain bike that would be quite a slog. I think if you are going to do any climbing on an e-bike without a battery, just make sure you've got an uplift or a chairlift. That was no fun at all. Right, now the piece I've been looking forward to. Now I've been dying to ride an e-bike down a hill without a battery. But am I going to lose a bit of speed because I haven't got that weight? Or is this bike going to feel a lot more nimble and a lot more agile? Only one way to find that out. Stop the clock, 1 minute 31, no battery on the downhill. Now I cased a couple of those jumps at the bottom. The bike just didn't feel like it had enough pop, so maybe when you stick the battery in, might change things up. So some bike parks don't actually allow e-bikes at the park themselves, so the only way you're going to get around it is by whipping the battery out and getting on the uplift. Up to the top of the hill, no pushing your bike, simply jump off the uplift, get on your bike without the battery and shred down the hill. Right, so that's the uplift done. That was super speedy to get to the top of the hill. Really efficient way, and probably the fastest too by my watch. But the only thing is, I'm not feeling that warmed up. I've literally got off the van, jumped on my bike, now I've got to shred down this track. If I was to ride up, I think I'd be warmed up, ready to nail the run straight away. Let's see anyway, let's go. So you go 1 minute 28 seconds to do it with no battery after the uplift. So that's pretty interesting. So finally we're back in business. The battery is installed now in the e-bike the way it was meant to be. Now I can't actually wait to ride up this hill. I was dreading it with no battery, but this is the way it was meant to be. Let's go. Right, boost mode, engaged. Cheers, thank you. Cheers, Carlos. Thanks. Wow, now that was a load of fun. That was what his e-bikes were designed for. I feel like I've done that literally in half the time. I'm feeling refreshed. I can literally drop straight into this trail and shred. I'm not stood here for half an hour catching my breath before I drop in. So on both of those runs without a battery, the bike felt really skittish in the corners, a lot less grip, purely because that low down weight wasn't there. And also on the bigger jumps, I couldn't preload the bike into the faces as much as I can with a battery. I felt it was coming up short and a lot more effort to get that distance on the jumps. So I plugged the battery in, time to hit the downhill. Straight away, that first step down felt so good. These corners, way better. Wow, now that felt pretty good. It felt way more planted. I think even just braking, I could feel the bike hooking up into the dirt way more, that weight down low. Even on some of the jumps, I could preload the face so much better as well. The bike felt a lot more planted, loads more stable in the air. And even on the down slopes, I could feel that weight generate even more speed out the trail. So my day is done here at 417 Bike Park, and it's been a really good day on this bike, with and without the battery. It's been some interesting things going on. So I think we head back to the shed and analyze all this data. Right, so let's take a look at all this data then. So the actual climb we are riding up is 3/4 of a mile long, 276 feet of elevation. The uplift, however, had a bit more of a direct route. But the burning question you guys want to know is what was faster up and down the hill? Well, let's kick things off with the uplift. Now, this was the fastest up the hill with a time of 2 minutes 43 seconds. However, we didn't factor in the account of loading and unloading bikes, which obviously added a bit more time to it. It was the least amount of effort because I was just sat in a van, although my heart rate reached a max of 145 beats per minute on the way up in that van. Now, I don't remember the uplift driver being that scary. Now, second place, battery in, 2 minutes 59 seconds up the hill, rode up in boost mode the whole way, average speed of 13.6 miles per hour. My max heart rate was 139 beats per minute, so 6 beats lower than the uplift. So in last place, as expected, battery out. Now this was the slowest way up the hill by far. Slogged my way up 6 minutes, 55 seconds. Heart beating out of my chest, literally. A max heart rate of 144 beats per minute. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. This is the times down the hill. Now in first place was the battery in the bike. So I put in a time of 1 minute 24 seconds, hit 25 miles per hour on the way down, had a max heart rate of 131 beats per minute. I think this is because I've basically ridden up the hill. I was all sort of ready to drop in. I felt warmed up and I was in the zone, smashed it on the way down. So in second place was no battery after the uplift. Now my time was 1 minute 28 seconds. That was 4 seconds slower going down the hill than with the battery in the bike. And interestingly, my max heart rate was 123 beats per minute, which was the lowest overall on the day of the 3 runs. Probably because I've been sat on my bum on the uplift, my muscles weren't warmed up, and I found it pretty hard to get in the zone on that run. And in third place, no battery after climbing up the hill. Now this was the slowest time of the day, 1 minute 31 seconds, so a whole 7 seconds slower than with the battery in, and almost 2 miles per hour slower on average. Max heart rate was 125 beats per minute, and I felt pretty tired after riding up that hill, so I had to sit around, catch my breath, and when I dropped in, it took me a little while to get back in the zone and feel good on my bike, hence the slower time. So some pretty interesting data and times there. Now we get asked the question quite a lot, does removing the battery out of the bike going to make it more agile and nimble? Now actually I think when I removed the battery, the bike felt a lot more skittish and a lot more less planted than it does with the battery in. I think with the battery in, you've got that nice low down weight that gives you increased grip, makes the bike a lot more predictable, and it corners and jumps a lot better. Answering that question, can you ride your e-bike without a battery? Well, yes, you definitely can. I think it's a really good option if you're traveling with your e-bike or if you need to shed a little bit of weight out of it for like the chairlift. However, you will not catch me riding my e-bike up a hill without a battery. But that's it for today's video. Really hope you've enjoyed it. Drop some comments in the box below about whether you guys have ridden without a battery on your e-bike. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to EMBN by clicking the globe in the middle of the screen, and we shall see you next time.